What's up, guys? It is Gingerfusion, Robbie Reeds. From Checkmate Fusion, giving you my Oceania first place deck profile. It'll be a very short profile because I've already been playing this deck for a while. Not that much is different, but I can talk a little bit about why the deck is probably your best deck going in the next format. And this is on location, so we're still enjoying Australia, but we wanted you guys to have the deck profile because I know a few of you guys have other nationals. So the basic concept of the deck is 100% just that first card. The very first card here, this Son Goku. Hopefully it makes it bigger when I click on it. But the Son Goku Attack to Save the World is the whole reason this deck is doing so well. It just says if you have a red skillless battle card in play, this card is played, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards of 30k or less, ignoring it. And KO it. And then the other part is if your leader is red and you have a battle card with 30k or more, you can play it and the skillless at any point. This is kind of the foundation of the deck because you're just spending 2 energy and it lets you get so far ahead because the leader ability lets you neg, of course, unisons or battle cards as well. And effectively you're playing 2 targets. So you're going to get 2 -15s and a KO anything 30k or less, ignoring barrier. When you put all that together, you're basically paying 2 energy to just wipe your opponent's entire board. What makes it even better, though, is you get a 30k double striker for 2 energy, and you're like, well, that'd be pretty good, right? We'd all pay that. But then on top of that, you also get a 30k who's going to attack on its own with single strike. So when you put that together, it's the most value you can get for 2 energy, I think, in the game right now. You can argue there's some other cool tricks, but consistently, this is going to be your highest plus in the game. And the crazier part is, this used to be at a power level that we would have considered to be an SCR, right? Like, if there was an SCR that said, pay, 2 energy, wipe your opponent's board, play, put out a 30k and it's got double strike, I would play that all day. I used to play Wicked Saiyans, and that did half this amount of value. So it's very insane. And so that's the reason why the deck's performing really well, right? One of the things to keep in mind for Worlds and Nationals and all these things is we effectively have a 3-body system right now, right? 3 decks are crushing, and those are the only 3 decks, in my opinion, that are viable. Number 1 being Kidku, and Kidku kind of keeps out a lot of the other decks. It keeps out green, it keeps out a lot of the blue decks, it keeps out a lot of the black decks, just because it's always wiping unisons, and a lot of these other decks need to maintain their unison to main value. The other deck that's very popular right now and that has a lot of potential is Zamasu. It's probably the best green deck. It has a great late game because it has 2 win conditions, but it also just has big bodies who can combo for free. Based on what happened to me in the last game. And they're decent, right? Because they're indestructible. So only red can really deal with their cards. And the last thing, I'm going to put them in one category, even though they're technically 2 decks. That'd be Nova and Oceanus. They're basically the same deck, just slightly different. But basically, if you're playing the Dragons, that's your 3rd deck. In my opinion, there is nothing else viable if you want to win Nats. Somebody can prove me wrong, that's fine. But I was not surprised to see that France had obviously those 3 decks in top 4, or yeah, all of that was top 4. And then now for this event, I believe those are exactly the same top 4 with a new set, right? Decks like Gogeta, they're just not relevant because they don't do enough, and they don't do enough that's free. So I'll talk about that a little bit because we did have tech cards, and that'll be kind of it because I am enjoying some Australia fun. And that's the last thing. It's just a shout out. To John, he mentioned this card to me a while ago, and then we saw other people play him in their lists. This is probably the only cool tech card I ran. Fly to the Grand Eagle is how I won in the finals. My opponent was able to knock me to 1 life on turn 1, which hurt because I tapped out. And then I was able to stay in the game with Topo and other effects. But Flight of the Grand Eagle, when he went all in, I was able to pump my leader, and so he basically just lost at that point. This card is really cool tech card for Kidku, because you give 2 of your battle cards, which you have plenty of, -10k, and in exchange, your leader gets plus 100. The reason why this is such a big deal is if you play a 30k versus Kidku in the mirror, it's usually like a detriment to you. Because you don't want your opponent to be able to play that 5-drop. So this is a cool way of making your 30k smaller during their turn if they swing first, so they can't then play the same card against you. So it's like a cool way to protect it. So I like it a lot. You'll notice in my list, though, we're not running as much defense. I'm only running 2 testing the oppositions. I'm not running any Videl. Videl is completely cut. For defense, I'm primarily just focusing on being aggressive with 4 Chaozus and 4 Bulmas. You'll notice that basically the concept here is if you're keeping your energy up on your side, you're not being able to put that much pressure. And so if you can't tap out, I don't need defense. That, like I said, worked, except for when I played Oceanus, because he was like, no, it's fine, let's race. And he almost won that race because his battle cards are bigger. Other honorable mentions are, of course, Baby Unison, right? You guys have seen it in my other lists. I think my whole team's playing it. Robert DaCosta, I think, is the first one to start playing with it. Baby Unison just lets you gain value over time in 2 ways, right? You get to kill battle cards while drawing a card, huge relevant in this kind of era. But then a bigger deal being the fact that your leader gets that plus 1k. That means if anybody ever swings with a 20k, you just need to do a 5k. That's a big deal because your hand size is so small in the deck. The other thing to keep in mind is this was meant for a best of 3 top cut format. So you'll notice certain cards are in the main board, like Mai is main. Well, that's just because you need a cantrip, but also blue is your worst matchup in top cut because generally speaking, you need tech for the type of players who are going to beat you. I'm an aggressive player, but I'm not the smartest guy. You guys can see mistakes I've done all throughout my career of cards. They're usually just because I'm thinking about too much stuff. Well, the players who are going to be your smartest guys in the room are going to be playing blue, they're going to be playing Zamasu, or they're going to be playing dragons, right? Those guys are really good at those type of decks, and you need a main board answer for them. You'll notice in this list, unlike France, where I got 3rd place, Deborah went to my sideboard. This is still a great card, but I'm not worried about green in this format. Discarding cards from my hand is not a big deal, and Shadow Dragons doesn't make me discard enough cards to warrant a Deborah. What you'll see more so main board is like Topo, Explosive Dance, and just a generically good amount. We've already shown this tech in our other videos where Fearless Pan lets us beat the yellow Shadow Dragon set, just because now your skillless cards have double strikes, so you can push harder. But a lot of it's just consistency. Like you're gonna find with kidku, you're consistently doing the exact same play, right? Your turn 1 is always going to be your Z, or your turn 2, sorry, is almost always going to be from your Z deck. You're always playing this amazing Waters card, and then you're Awakening, you're drawing 2, and after you do that, you get to play a TN. This TN is going to be a 20k. You're just going to go ahead and draw a card from your leader ability, and then boom, you're passing the turn. Then you're hoping to just Explosive Dance your opponent's turn, and then they're done. And then you start your next turn. You play a Baby Unison. You just slowly start gaining value, but it becomes kind of the same thing. And the reason why it's the same thing is you're a draw 2 leader, you swing when you attack, and you get to take your own life when you need to, so you're almost always Awakening on turn 2. You'll notice a tech card also, because of that, we run a single Brawly Omen. This is meant to scare other kidku decks. Knowing that your opponent has this card means that you might have to combo inefficiently to guarantee I don't just put it in the drop. Well, I used to run 3 of it, and I found that 3 is too much. 1 is enough because you're just hoping for it turn 1 if you have it, and your opponent does do an awkward combo just to try to like awaken, you can stop it. But then also late game, if you have it and your opponent plays a, like a super combo, hey, you can just put it in the drop and then like get out of it for effectively a 5k. So it's a great card. But I don't think you play a lot of it. You'll notice another tech card main was meant for Gogeta, which is ironic, right? Because the first thing I told you was Gogeta's not really viable, and I think that's true, but I still feared enough that I ran this card. It's just a cool little tech that I think Legends, Michael Carrick gave us, and all it is, it just says if you have 2 or more red energy, I can lock one of my opponent's leaders so they can't attack next turn, but it costs 2, and you have to have 4 or more energy. So it's basically between this and Explosive Dance. For 3 energy, you're just passing your opponent's turn, and you only lose a card. Because you got to keep in mind, Kidku gets better on turn 5, turn 6. You can really close out games. So that turn 4, it's not that uncommon where you just want to be like, you know what? Hey, let's skip. Let's just skip this turn. I can't beat you right now, and I don't want to die. But it didn't work. Like, I thought that was the theory, and that card gets cut. You won't see it in my main board list at all. I still will probably run this tech. This is from John from Australia, the guy who invited me. I wasn't even going to come this year. But once again, he was like, "Nah, man, you got to come out. You got to defend your second place." And then he even offered to pay for my flight. Had he not done that, I don't think I would have came. So, but yeah, so this is just it. So Son Goku, he's an amazing card. All he really does that matters is he's going to choose one of your opponent's unisons or battle cards, ignoring barrier. He switches it to rest mode, and their skills are negated for the turn. So cards like Gogeta, SCR, which is scary, right? Like for the blue, if they have a lot of aggression. But also, there's a lot of unisons that do crazy stuff, right? There's a unison that redirects in Gogeta. In the case of kidku decks, they have a unison that says, hey, you can go ahead and, like baby, you get bigger for the turn. Well, we can turn that effect off as long as we don't attack it, it won't, replenish. Well, then there's other effects that are relevant, right? Like indestructible, a bunch of little effects like that where now we can just kill their battle card. That feels really good for just 2 energy. And a dual attacker for 25k for 2 honestly feels good. And you're almost always going to have a skillless. Kotsukai was at 2. I would say that almost every single game, I still would always just do its normal effect where you do 2 cards. But there was the occasional where I had to do 1 and just, hey, just draw 1 and it felt bad. But it's still a very strong way of filtering through your deck. But now that I'm not running as many negates, this deck does better. I think one of the weaknesses I had with my previous list was it felt like it was too slow. And so now it feels better. Like this feels like a very optimized and teched out list. There's a lot of cards I'd like to change and look at now that I have some room with this and seeing the success other players had with Videl. But to talk to you just real quickly about Sideboard before I go to get some tacos in Australia. This was the sideboard. You're going to notice it was made basically to beat certain decks, right? So I have the Demigraws to beat black because black is a very like all-in, can just have tons of value early game, and Kidku can struggle with that early aggression. Same reason why we also had Violent Rays, right? Like I don't want to die to a bunch of aggression, like their SCR and stuff. I want to set up a later turn. But Violent Rays is primarily here for yellow, right? Yellow and red, we'll bring it in. For yellow, we always bring in that Fearless Pan. But the important part is Zamasu, right? Zamasu is probably going to see more play in America than any other region, right? America has some of the most control-oriented guys, and they're good with the deck. Like they're not just playing the deck; they're becoming masters with the deck. So we have sideboard for them. The most important is this Gotenks. He's a very cool card. He lets us steal basically one of their super combos from their hand and look at their hand. I think it also hits Oceanus, but you're basically just paying 2, and then after you get to look at your opponent's hand by sacrificing it, and when you do so, you get to get rid of any multicolor card. So if they're on one of those builds that are running Apex or Shenron SCR, I saw a few Zamasu builds that are running it, you can take their SCR. That feels great, let me tell you. But otherwise, you can just, hey, take an Oceanus, something that's going to stop you from winning, or a super combo, more than likely than not. And then you'll notice this little tech card. It was a one of. And people are like, well, how relevant is a one of going to be? Well, the reason why it's more relevant than other cards is you'll notice this one is for Zamasu, right? You have to combo a card, right? It says, here you go. I'll read the whole thing to you because you've probably never seen this card. He's the Village Guardian. When you combo with this card, if your leader's red, you choose 1 card from your hand and you put it in your drop. If you do, choose up to 3 battle cards with a cost of 3 or more and power of 3,500 or less, which is pretty much your whole deck, right? Like the only thing you can't get back is your SCR, which is unfortunate. And then you put them, place them at the bottom of your deck in any order. So you're basically just getting back 3 cards, and Zamasu can only mill you usually to exactly your amount you have left. Like they don't, Janimba and those other decks, they used to have a ton of available mill. This doesn't have that, and so this, they're going to be like, hey, you're at what, 4 cards, and they're going to want to mill you, that final bit. And then you take your turn. If you were to swing, they're like, I can get you now with 1 more mill mid battle or an effect. Well, this lets you have the opposite, because now during the mid range game you can play this card from your drop, which is the big deal, right? Because this is a Earthling, and he's an Earthling only. So your Bulma brings him back, which is really, really great, because now we have another target for our Bulma that is more relevant. And then you just combo them away. Like it's just that simple. And then you combo away like a Bulma, and then hopefully they get rid of another one of your cards. You do it again later on throughout the game, and then you get back that value. Sure, you're discarding a card from your hand, but now Zamasu can't win from their alternative win condition, and you're just you're crushing it. Every color has a copy of this card, I believe. I don't know if black does, but I know blue, green, and yellow all got one. I'd recommend these in your sideboard because Zamasu is the best deck. I want to make that clear is that Kidku is not the best deck. Kidku is the best deck for an aggressive player. I'd argue that Zamasu is now the best deck because the types of players who can handle playing Zamasu are going to be better than most of your aggro players, right? People like me who play aggressive strategies, we only do well at the start of a format, and then our results go down because we want to attack, we want to, play linear strategies. But as people figure out tricks and more effects, like I saw somebody was playing Dark, the Dark Hole, I think it's called, but it's a green card, and so his Zamasu lets him, sacrifice it. He gets to draw a card and he gets to wipe his opponent's board in a turn. Well, that was a really cool effect I didn't think about, and that would have destroyed my Kidku lineup because like activate effectively battle, you're just wiping my board during my turn. I'm expecting you to wipe my board during your turn. So there's a lot to be said about the power that Zamasu has, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on for US Nats. So I will say whatever I decide to play, it'll be something that has 100% or at 90%, as high as I can get to beat Zamasu. That's what I'm going to focus on. One more thing to point out that you guys might see in my list that was a little bit more interesting or fun was I'm running for this new card here, Android Hellfighter. This is primarily just for the mirror. It's very good into explosive dance, and it kind of sucks in every other game. So somebody told me to run 4. I only was running 1. I upped it to 2. 2 felt fine. I don't know if I ever want to run 4 of it, but it was very cool because effectively you're just swinging with the battle card, and he draws a card when you play him. So he's just like a free cantrip. But what makes him so cool is then on your next swing with, let's say your leader, you can combo him and a 30k from your drop to set up another swing if you're under explosive dance. And that's what my opponent, Benny, I think he was my best opponent I played against. Like everyone else was very good. There was nobody who I thought was bad, but Benny was outplaying me left and right and really made me start sweating, primarily because he was utilizing this card as a 4 of. So I could see an argument where you run 4 of this in your sideboard for the red matchup. I'm not going to necessarily, but if you want to, wouldn't be a wrong decision. The other card that was a standout MVP was, of course, everyone's favorite card, Testing the Opposition. Testing the Opposition, has kind of like these free negates. I feel like I've seen less and less of them in lists. Even mine, I'm only running 2. But we're in such a free format where so many decks can do so many great effects that I feel like free is the name of the game. So whatever you want to play for, we have Latin America this week, I believe, and then afterwards we have the Netherlands for Europe. I think you focus on whatever is free. That's your best deck because like Oceanus, what makes it such a good deck is it plays 1 energy. It plays a free 8-drop, right? It gets to play its 4-drop into an 8-drop. Black right now does the same thing, right? Like they're just making a bunch of overwhelms with their Demigraw unison. Kidku, free skill list that have removal. Zamasu, free mill that's just built into the strategies that doesn't cost you more effects. So you have to find something that has that kind of value if you want to be relevant. So I have a lot of crazy deck lists I want to try. But first, I got to go enjoy myself. Today was seeing the beautiful Great Barrier Reef. As you can probably tell from my skin that is somewhat red and lobstery. But it was just a good time. So I appreciate everybody from Oceania and all of Australia. Every time I come, this is just a blast to hang out with everybody. France was still great. We had a great time. We went out for food. We all hung out, and it was good. But Oceania it feels different. And so it's great to come and play games. I always give the same story when I talk about why I do this, but I've been playing card games for 20 years. But for me, it started when I was 16 years old. Kaiba had his Blue Eyes White Dragon jet, and he just flew around the world battling people and wanting to do all this stuff and, come up with the Battle City games. And so as I got older in life, this is all I wanted to do was just enjoy my hobby, just take a weekend and just go visit some exotic location and play cards. And so I get to do it, and I'm grateful for it. So hopefully this deck profile helps you guys. Like I said, it's not too much spicy or anything. It's just the very consistent, the very good Kidku. And I think we should expect that pretty soon this leader gets some sort of a hit. Really just because this Awakened side is too good. We've never had a leader who says that, whenever you play a skillless battle card, draw a card. That's already pretty good. But then, whenever you play anything with 30k or power, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards or unisons, giving it negative 5k. It's already too much, right? Like that would have been enough. But then the fact that we get all the way down here and it's like, oh, you can play a red skillless from your Z deck or from hand for 0 mana. It really made it too much, and I fully expect after Worlds he gets added to the list of leaders who are banned or severely errata. Just because going forward, I don't think any of us want it to exist. And it will be unfortunate when it is gone because I think you're going to see a wave of Zamasu decks because that deck is so good and it's being controlled by kidku. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. And let me know how it goes in Latin America and Netherlands. Later.